The studio glowed under the weight of expectation, its sleek set designed to feel intimate yet monumental, a perfect stage for Oprah Winfrey's new live special. The audience, a sea of eager faces, buzzed with anticipation, their whispers drowned by the swelling music. Oprah stood center stage, her presence commanding, her smile warm but tinged with something sharper tonight. Across from her, Elon Musk leaned back in a minimalist chair, his posture casual, almost defiant, his eyes glinting with the restless energy of a man who thrived on chaos. The air crackled with unspoken hostility, a collision of worlds about to ignite. Oprah raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Tonight we're diving deep," she said, her voice rich, deliberate. "Elon Musk, a man who's changed how we see the future, is here to talk purpose, impact, responsibility." She paused, her gaze locking onto Elon's. "But I'm not here to hold hands. We're getting real." The audience cheered, sensing the edge in her tone. Elon smirked, a flicker of amusement crossing his face, but his fingers tapped restlessly, betraying a hint of unease. "Real's my favorite flavor, Oprah," Elon said, his voice light but laced with challenge. "But let's not pretend this is about truth. You've got an agenda, same as me. So what's the play? Paint me as the villain?" The jab landed hard and the crowd gasped, some laughing nervously. Oprah's smile tightened, her eyes narrowing. She'd invited Elon to discuss his ventures, from SpaceX to Neuralink, but his recent string of polarizing comments, dismissive tweets about societal issues, had shifted her approach. This wasn't just an interview. It was a reckoning. "You think I need to paint you as anything?" Oprah countered, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a steely cadence. "You're doing that just fine on your own, Elon. You talk about saving humanity, colonizing Mars, but when people ask you to care about the world we're living in right now, you shrug. Why is that?" The question was a blade, cutting through Elon's carefully curated image. The audience erupted, some clapping, others murmuring, already picking sides. Elon leaned forward, his smirk gone, his tone sharp. "I don't shrug, Oprah. I prioritize. You want me to cry on cue? Play the bleeding heart? That's your game, not mine. I'm building the future while you're busy selling feelings." The words were venomous, a direct attack on Oprah's empire of empathy. The crowd roared, split between boos and cheers, the tension palpable. Oprah's face flickered with anger, but she held her ground, her presence unshaken. "Selling feelings?" she said, her voice rising, each word a hammer. "I've spent my life giving voice to people you wouldn't even notice, Elon. People who live in the world you're so eager to leave behind. You think your rockets make you untouchable? You're standing on their backs." The accusation hung heavy, raw, personal. The audience was on its feet, the energy chaotic, feeding off the clash of ideals. Elon's eyes flashed, his casual facade cracking, revealing the intensity beneath. "You want to talk standing?" he shot back, standing now, his voice cutting through the noise. "I'm standing on my own, Oprah. No sponsors, no scripts, no safety net. You built your empire on tears. I built mine on results. So don't lecture me about who I notice." The defiance was electric, a challenge to Oprah's moral authority. The crowd was a frenzy, some shouting Elon's name, others chanting for Oprah. The divide stark. Oprah stepped closer, undaunted, her voice a mix of fury and conviction. "Results? Your results come with a cost, Elon. You disrupt, you destroy, and you call it progress. But progress for who? Not the people I see, not the ones you ignore." The words were a rallying cry, and the audience roared, the sound deafening. Elon's jaw tightened, his hands clenching, the weight of her words hitting harder than he'd expected. The producer in the booth signaled for a break, but Oprah ignored it, her eyes locked on Elon's. "You want to talk truth?" she said, her voice low, dangerous. Let's talk about what you're really running from. The challenge was a spark, promising a fire that would consume them both. As the show cut to commercial, the audience's cheers echoed, the battle lines drawn, the stage set for a confrontation neither would back down from. The commercial break did nothing to douse the flames licking at the studio. Backstage, the atmosphere was a tangle of nerves and adrenaline. Oprah stood in a quiet corner, her hands clasped, her face a mask of controlled fury. She'd known inviting. Elon would be risky, his unpredictability a wild card, but his blatant disrespect, his dismissal of her life's work, had struck a nerve deeper than she'd anticipated. This wasn't just about ratings or viral moments. It was personal, a clash of values she couldn't let slide. Across the hall, Elon paced in a makeshift lounge, his phone in hand, scrolling through the explosion of reactions online. Oprah vs. Elon trended worldwide, clips of their exchange racking up millions of views. He muttered to himself, half smirking, half seething, knowing he couldn't walk away without losing face. The stage manager approached Oprah, her voice tentative. "We're back in 2 minutes. You sure you want to keep going?" Oprah's eyes flicked up, resolute. "He doesn't get to walk in here, tear down everything I stand for, and leave unscathed," she said, her tone final. The manager nodded, darting off. Elon, meanwhile, ignored his team's pleas to soften his approach. "She wants a fight. She's got one," he said, tossing his phone aside. The audience, still buzzing, sensed the storm wasn't over, their anticipation a living thing as the lights flared back to life. The show resumed, and the crowd's roar was deafening, a mix of allegiance and bloodlust. Oprah retook the stage, her presence regal but charged, her smile gone. "Welcome back," she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "We're here with Elon Musk, and things got heated. Let's see if we can find some truth in the fire." The audience cheered, but it was fractured, some clapping for Oprah's poise, others for Elon's defiance. Elon sauntered out, his grin sharp, his eyes locked on Oprah like a challenger in a ring. "Truth, huh?" Elon said, settling into his chair, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "That's a nice word, Oprah, but you're not after truth. You're after control. You want me to fit your narrative, play the bad guy so you can look like the hero. Not happening." The accusation was a grenade, and the crowd gasped, then erupted, some booing, others shouting support. Oprah's face tightened, but she didn't flinch, leaning forward, her voice low, cutting. "Control?" she said, each word deliberate. "I don't need to control you, Elon. You're doing a fine job of showing everyone who you are. You talk about freedom, building a better world, but when someone asks you to face the people you're leaving behind, you lash out. Why's that so hard for you?" The question was a mirror, reflecting Elon's contradictions, and the audience leaned in, hanging on the edge of their seats. Elon's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. "You think I don't face people?" he shot back, his voice rising, raw. "I'm out there every day, taking risks, putting everything on the line. You sit in your studio, preaching unity, while I'm building the tech to keep humanity alive. You don't get to judge me when you're playing it safe." The words were a direct hit, questioning Oprah's relevance in a world of hard innovation. The crowd roared, split down the middle, the tension a living pulse. Oprah stood, her movement deliberate, her voice a mix of anger and conviction. "Safe? You think lifting up the voiceless, fighting for people who've been ignored, is safe? I've been in the trenches, Elon, long before you were tweeting your way to fame. You don't get to dismiss that, because it doesn't fit your blueprint." The audience was on its feet, the sound overwhelming, some chanting her name, others egging Elon on. The clash was no longer just words. It was a war of worlds, empathy versus ambition, heart versus mind. Elon rose to meet her, his height imposing, his voice sharp. "Trenches? You mean your cushy talk shows, your book clubs? Don't kid yourself, Oprah. You're a brand, Same as me. The difference is, I'm not pretending to save souls while I'm saving the species. The insult was brutal, a dismissal of Oprah's legacy, and the crowd gasped, the air thick with shock. Oprah's eyes blazed, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice held firm. "You think you're saving anyone?" she said, stepping closer, her voice ablade. "You're running, Elon. Running from the mess you make, the people you hurt, the questions you can't answer. And I'm not letting you hide behind your big ideas anymore." The words were a challenge, a demand for accountability, and the audience exploded, the studio shaking with their energy. As the producers signaled another break, the tension lingered, a promise of a showdown that would leave no one untouched. The studio lights flickered as the commercial break ended, but the real heat came from the unresolved fire between Oprah and Elon. Backstage, the crew was a mess of whispered debates and nervous glances, torn between the show's soaring ratings and the risk of it imploding. Oprah stood near the stage, her breathing steady but her eyes alight with a resolve that unnerved even her closest staff. Elon's words had cut deep, dismissing her life's work as a performance. And she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who'd ever been dismissed by his brand of relentless ambition. In another corner, Elon leaned against a wall, his expression a mix of defiance and calculation. He knew he'd struck a nerve, but Oprah's refusal to back down was a challenge he hadn't expected. The internet was a wildfire, clips of their clash fueling debates across platforms, and he wasn't about to let her claim the moral high ground. The stage manager's voice broke the tension. 30 seconds! Oprah nodded, her jaw set, and strode back to the stage. Elon followed, his casual swagger masking the storm beneath. The audience, restless and ravenous, erupted as the cameras rolled, their cheers a mix of loyalty and chaos. Oprah faced the crowd, her presence a beacon, but her voice carried a new weight, raw and unfiltered. "We're back, and we're not done," she said, her eyes flicking to Elon. "This isn't just about me or him. It's about what we stand for, what we owe each other." The crowd roared, sensing the stakes had risen. Elon settled into his chair, his grin sharp, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Nice speech, Oprah," he said, his tone biting. "But let's cut the poetry. You're mad because I don't play your game, don't bow to your version of good. I'm not here to make you feel better about the world, I'm here to fix it." The words were a gauntlet, framing Oprah's empathy as a weakness, and the audience gasped, some cheering, others booing, the divide stark. Oprah's face hardened, but her voice stayed calm, a quiet fury that silenced the room. "Fix it? You don't fix anything by trampling people, Elon. You talk about the future, but you're blind to the present. You hurt people, ignore their pain, and call it collateral damage. That's not progress, that's arrogance." The accusation was a thunderbolt, and the crowd exploded, some shouting her name, others jeering. Elon's hands clenched, his casual facade cracking, the weight of her words hitting harder than he'd admit. "You think I ignore pain?" he snapped, leaning forward, his voice raw, unguarded. "I see it every day. I live it. You think building something real, something that lasts, is easy. I'm fighting battles you can't even imagine, Oprah, and I don't have time to hold hands while I do it." The admission was a rare glimpse into Elon's world, the relentless pressure of his vision, and the audience quieted, caught off guard by his vulnerability. But Oprah wasn't swayed, her eyes blazing with conviction. "Then why make it harder for everyone else?" she said, stepping closer, her voice a mix of anger and sorrow. "You've got power, Elon, more than most. You could lift people up, give them hope, but you choose to push them aside. You mock their struggles, their stories, because they don't fit your plan. That's not a battle. That's a choice." The words were a mirror, forcing Elon to face his impact, and the crowd roared, the sound a tidal wave of emotion. Some wept, others shouted, the room alive with the weight of her truth. Elon stood, his height towering, his voice sharp, trembling with fury. A choice? You think I chose this? To be the guy everyone loves to hate? I'm doing what no one else. Will, Oprah? You want to talk hope? I'm giving humanity a shot at survival, while you're out there selling dreams that don't last. The attack was vicious, a dismissal of Oprah's legacy, and the audience gasped, the air thick with shock. Oprah's hands trembled, but her voice held firm, cutting through the chaos. Dreams? She said, her voice low, lethal. My dreams. Built schools, homes, futures. Yours build empires. But at what cost? You're not saving us, Elon. You're leaving us behind, and I'm calling you out for it. The challenge was a spark, igniting the room, the audience on its feet, screaming, chanting, the tension a living thing. As the producer signaled another break, the clash hung unresolved, a promise of a reckoning that would shake them both to their core. The studio was a cauldron of raw emotion. As the commercial break ended, the audience's fervor undimmed, their shouts and chants echoing through the rafters. Backstage, the crew stood frozen, caught between awe and dread, knowing this clash was rewriting the rules of live television. Oprah paced briefly in the wings, her heart pounding, her mind sharp. Elon's relentless attacks, his refusal to acknowledge the human cost of his ambition, had pushed her to a place beyond anger, a fierce determination to hold him accountable, not just for her, but for everyone his choices affected. Across the hall, Elon sat alone, his head bowed, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. Oprah's words had pierced deeper than he'd expected, stirring doubts he rarely allowed himself to face. But he wasn't done. Retreating wasn't in his nature, and he'd fight to the end to defend his vision. The stage manager's call snapped them back to reality. We're live in 10. Oprah straightened, her resolve a steel thread, and walked out to a tidal wave of applause. Elon followed, his stride deliberate, his eyes burning with a mix of defiance and something softer, almost haunted. The audience was a living entity, their energy split between loyalty to Oprah's heart and fascination with Elon's audacity. Oprah faced them, her voice steady but charged with purpose. We're here, raw and real, she said, her gaze shifting to Elon. This isn't just a fight. It's a question. What do we owe each other? And who pays the price when we forget? The crowd roared, the weight of her words sinking in. Elon leaned back, his grin gone, his voice low, edged with strain. You love your questions, Oprah, but they're loaded. You want me to owe everyone, to carry their weight. I'm not built for that. I'm built to push, to break things, to make what's impossible real. You call it forgetting. I call it focus. The admission was stark, a glimpse into the relentless drive that defined him, and the audience quieted, some nodding, others murmuring dissent. Oprah's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice held firm, cutting through the haze. Focus, she said, stepping closer, her tone a mix of challenge and sorrow. You're so focused on the stars, Elon. You don't see the ground you're burning. People aren't your collateral damage. They're the reason you get to dream at all. You owe them more than your machines. The words were a plea wrapped in steel, and the crowd erupted, some weeping, others shouting, the room alive with emotion. Elon's jaw tightened, his hands clenching, the weight of her truth a blow he couldn't dodge. You think I don't know that? He said, standing, his voice cracking, raw with a vulnerability he rarely showed. I see them, Oprah. Every failure, every loss, it's on me. But I can't stop because if I do, we all lose. You want me to feel their pain? I do, every damn day, but I don't have the luxury of slowing down. The confession stunned the room. The audience hushed, caught by the glimpse of Elon's humanity. For a moment, the fight felt less like a war and more like two people grappling with the same impossible question. Oprah's face flickered with empathy. But she didn't relent, her voice rising, resonant. Then why make it harder for them, Elon? You feel their pain, but you mock their hope, dismiss their stories. You could be their voice, their ally, but you choose to stand alone. That's not strength, it's fear. The accusation was a lightning strike, and the crowd gasped, then roared, the sound a mix of awe and agitation. Elon's eyes darkened, his hands trembling, the weight of her words forcing him to confront the isolation of his path. Fear? He said, his voice low, almost a growl. You think I'm afraid? I'm not hiding, Oprah. I'm fighting for something bigger than your talk shows. Your tears. You want me to be your hero? I'm not that guy. I'm the one who does what no one else will, even if it makes me the villain. The defiance was fierce, but it carried a trace of pain. A man wrestling with the cost of his choices. The audience was on its feet. The energy chaotic, split between those moved by his conviction and those rallying behind Oprah's call for humanity. Oprah stepped closer, her voice a blade, unwavering. Villain or not, you don't get to decide who pays for your fight. You're not alone, Elon, no matter how much you want to be. And I'm not letting you walk away without facing that. The challenge was a fire, igniting the room, the audience screaming, the tension a tangible force. As the producer signaled the final break, the clash hung unresolved, a promise of a resolution that would leave no one unchanged. The final commercial break felt like a held breath, the studio pulsing with the aftershocks of Oprah and Elon's clash. Backstage, the air was heavy with the weight of what had unfolded. Oprah stood alone, her hands clasped, her eyes distant but resolute. She'd pushed Elon to the edge, exposed the cracks in his armor, but she felt no victory, only a fierce need to bridge the chasm between their worlds. Elon, in a quiet corner, ran a hand through his hair, his face a mix of exhaustion and defiance. Oprah's relentless call for accountability had forced him to face truths he'd buried under layers of ambition, and though his instinct was to fight, a part of him wondered if she was right. The crew, sensing the historic weight of the moment, moved silently, preparing for the final act. The lights flared, and the audience's roar was a tidal wave, their energy a mix of awe and hunger for resolution. Oprah took the stage, her presence, a beacon of strength, her voice steady but warm, carrying a new note of hope. "We've been through fire tonight," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd before settling on Elon. "But fire can burn away what's false, leave what's true. Let's find that truth together." The crowd cheered, their applause a call for closure, not chaos. Elon walked out, his stride less swaggering, his eyes meeting Oprah's with a flicker of respect, though his guard was still up. He sat, his voice quieter but sharp. "You want truth, Oprah? Here's mine. I don't have all the answers. I push because I have to, because stopping means giving up. You think I don't care? I do, but I can't carry everyone. I need you to see that." The vulnerability was raw, a crack in his relentless facade, and the audience softened, some nodding, others murmuring. Oprah's face softened too, but her resolve held, her voice a blend of empathy and conviction. "I see you, Elon," she said, stepping closer, her tone gentle but firm. "I see the weight you carry, the fight you're in, but you don't have to carry it alone. You're not just building machines, you're shaping lives. You can't choose who you help, who you hurt, and then walk away. That's the truth you're running from, and it's time to stop." The words were a bridge, not a blade, and the crowd erupted, their applause a mix of tears and cheers, sensing a shift. Elon's eyes flickered, his hands unclenching, the fight draining from his posture. "Stop," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I don't know how, but maybe I've been looking at it wrong. Not your way, Oprah, but something else. Something that doesn't break everything." The admission was seismic, a man who'd built his life on certainty admitting doubt, and the audience gasped, then roared, moved by his honesty. Oprah nodded, her eyes shining, not with triumph, but with understanding. "That's the start, Elon," she said, her voice rising, resonant. "You don't have to be everyone's hero, but you can't be their enemy. You've got power, vision, heart. Use it to lift, not to leave. That's how we build a future. Together." The crowd was on its feet, the sound deafening, a wave of emotion sweeping the room. Elon looked at her, his expression a mix of conflict and clarity, and for the first time he extended a hand, a gesture of truce, not surrender. Oprah took it, her grip firm, her smile real. "We're not done talking," she said, her voice warm, "but we're done fighting." The audience cheered, some weeping, others chanting their names, the tension dissolving into a shared moment of humanity. Elon nodded, a faint smile breaking through, his walls not gone but cracked, a promise of something new. As the cameras panned out, Oprah faced the crowd, her voice a rallying cry. "This is what truth looks like. Messy, hard, but worth it. Let's keep asking, keep pushing, keep building." The audience roared, their applause a celebration, not just of the clash, but of the connection forged in its ashes. Elon stood beside her, not as a villain or a victor, but as a man who'd faced his reflection and chosen to step forward. The stage lights dimmed, the music swelled, and the story closed, not with a battle won, but with a bridge built, a triumph of heart over division, leaving the audience moved, united, and ready to carry the truth forward.